On my 700-mile canoe trip this summer of the Northern Forest Canoe Trail, the biggest planning piece that needed to happen was around food. So I eat a ketogenic diet, which means that I try to get about 70% of my calories from fats, instead, and keep carbs down, keep it pretty low. Which means that a lot of recipes and prepackaged foods and things of that nature I can't eat because they're all, dried beans or dried rice or pasta, etc., things like that. So my challenge was to come up with things that were high in fat that could keep for 2 weeks or more. And the answer to that challenge was three things. It was pemmican, which is dried. I used dried venison and rendered deer fat, so tallow and dried meat, half and half. You can find recipes of that online. Definitely a survival food. um, I kind of like it, but it's not exactly inspiring. One of the other things was nut bars or nutmix, as I call them. And it's very similar to pemmican in that it's ground and dried nuts, but then mixed in a fat. In this case, butter and coconut oil. I think I might have used ghee instead of coconut oil because it has a longer shelf life. But let's go and look at the nut bar tab. On the nut bar tab, we have all the ingredients, and then all this is how many grams of fat, carbs, and protein is in 1 ounce of that ingredient. And then over here is the number of cups that I used of each ingredient in one batch of nut mix, which when weighed at the end, let's see, I don't even know where that is actually. Here we go. When all of this was combined, it ended up weighing about 118 ounces, which let me work backwards to figure out how much fat, carbs, protein, and calories was in every ounce of nut mix that I made. I did a similar thing with pemmican, but it's much simpler. You have dried deer, you have deer tallow. That is spelled wrong. Deer tallow. And total calories. So with this information, calories per ounce here, and calories per ounce of the nut mix, that let me go to my master plan over here and plug that information in. So this is not my planning tab. This is what it actually sort of amounted to in these numbers over here. This is about how many ounces of each thing I ate, except for I ate every 13 days, except this chocolate bar is an item. It's not ounces. This chocolate bar is actually about 3 ounces. So I ate a chocolate bar for breakfast every day, and then I just subsisted on nut mix and pemmican with some added salt. And I had about 13 days of food when I resupplied, and that's how many ounces of pemmican. I couldn't fill it all the way because it's hard, so I couldn't pack it in. That's why it's only 3/4 filled. And then this one is the ounces of nut mix for 13 days. Okay, and down here we just have how many grams of fat I was getting from pemmican every day. So very simple, take the amount of fat grams, how many grams of fat per ounce, multiply times this divided by 13, and we get this. Great. Similar thing with all of these numbers. But basically what I get is I'm getting 330 grams of fat, 70 grams of carbs, 76 grams of protein. And I actually misspoke earlier. I'm sorry. I don't try to get 70% of my calories from fat. I try to get 70% of the macro nutrients that I consume from fat. So what the difference is that I'm actually getting much more than 70% of my calories from fat, because calories are every gram of fat is 9 calories, every gram of carbs is 4 calories, every gram of protein is 4 calories. So this 70% actually ends up being higher in terms of number of calories, which means that this chart is correct. Yeah, never mind. Okay. And here we have our breakdown per every 13 days. So when I resupplied, I was carrying this many calories of each, this many grams of fat, carbs, and protein. And here's how they lined up in there. I believe that ideally my protein would have been higher, my carbs would have been lower, but probably the way to fix that would be to increase how much pemmican I brought and reduce the amount of nut bars that I brought, because you'll see that the carbs on pemmican is much lower than the carbs on the nut bars, but the protein is about the same. So if I had brought less nut bars and more pemmican, then my carb ratio would get closer to 10. Carb to protein would get closer to 10 to 20%. Here's the surprising number. This is why I did this analysis, because I figured out about how much I had for 13 days, and I was able to figure out with all this information, how many calories I was consuming every day on average. And I was surprised to find this number at 3,130, because I had planned to pack for 4,000 calories a day, going off the knowledge that many Appalachian Trail hikers start planning at 5,000 calories a day. I'm canoeing, so it's a less intense activity. Most of the time, I'm not carrying 50 pounds or more the whole time. But I decided 4,000 was a good estimate, and as it turns out, I only needed 3/4 of that. So that was a very surprising number. So, and at no point did I feel really like I needed to eat more. Part of it may have been the blandness of what I was eating, and that if I had consumed more, I could have gone more every day instead of having to take breaks. But I think that I felt pretty balanced the whole time. So, for people trying to do something like this in the future, you may want to start with this number for calories per day, and just to be on the safe side, bump it up to 3,500, or even just start with 4,000 like I did. I mean, the nice thing about the foods that I brought was that I had extra, and so when I was done with the trip, I just took all the extra stuff and put it in the freezer. So now I have food. I already have food for another 13 days on another trip that I want to do. So that's the basic breakdown of the food that I brought. And yeah, feel free to comment below if you have any questions or want any clarification. Hopefully I will put this on a Google Doc that I can put a link to in the comment section below. Thank you. Have a great day.